Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 400, and today's date is June 25th, 2014, and the title of this episode is The Next False Flag Event Will Be Far Deadlier Than 9/11. And McCain is out there, and he is telling us that this next event that's going to occur is going to be far deadlier than anything that we've seen before, even 9/11. Now, what are they trying to tell us? They are trying to tell us there is an event on its way, and it will be a false flag event to bring us into war. And what they need to do is they need to get us into Syria somehow, some way, and this has been their plan all along, and we knew this was coming. We saw it months ago, and here we are today. And what is happening right now is that ISIL and ISIS, they were they still are funded by the United States government, Israel, and other Arab nations. They were sent into Iraq to make it look like terrorist groups are spreading from Syria. It got out of hand. The Sunni people started to rise up, and now there's a civil war inside of Iraq. Of course, this plan has gone south, but they're still using the pretext of ISIL and ISIS that they're going to attack the United States. They're continually out there telling us this because they have already planned what is about to occur. And we already see that they're linking Syria with Iraq, with ISIL and ISIS. The president was out there telling everyone that there's no geographical boundaries. Wherever they are, we will hunt them down and we will get this terrorist group. And of course, they're using the propaganda of social media to sell the entire thing. They're trying to convince us that this terrorist group is out there tweeting, they're on Facebook, they're on YouTube, advertising everything they're going to do. And of course, we know when we see something like this, this is a propaganda stunt from the United States government to convince the American people that this group is a danger to here in the United States and in England and in Europe. And this is exactly what they're doing. And they're doing this for one reason and one reason only. They realize the economy is coming down. They realize they need to get into Syria to continually prop up this dollar. They're having major problems in the Middle East. Yemen is falling apart. Libya is falling apart. And now Iraq is completely falling apart. They did not expect this. They thought this was going to go smoothly, just like Ukraine, and it hasn't. Everything is crashing down around them, and now they're looking to create this event to convince everyone that we need to go to war, that we need to send troops in, that it's time for the American people to go to World War III. And they're doing this because they're going to cover up the economic collapse, because they realize it's coming, and they realize they have no alternative but to do this. And this is why they're doing this at this time. And we can see right now that they will not stop. They are pushing this agenda forward, and we are definitely going to see something occur. Let's get into the economic collapse news. And of course, we know the economy is really going down the toilet here. And of course, the United States government and other agencies are out there telling us that the first quarter was terrible because of bad weather, but thank God it's a 0.5% positive range in GDP. Then of course they came back and they revised it to negative 1%, and they revised it again to negative 1.8%, and then now today they're saying, well, it's really like a negative 2.9%. And you have to remember, they recalculated GDP. They threw in research and development. They went all the way back to 1929, recalculated all the way up to the present time to keep GDP in the positive range, and now it is falling apart. This has nothing to do with the winter weather. This has to do with people do not have work. People are not spending. There's no manufacturing, and the entire economy is a complete illusion. And of course, we understand that they created Obamacare to raise revenue, and they thought this was going to help the economy. Well, what we're finding out is that the real reason GDP completely collapsed upon itself was because of Obamacare. The second and final revision of the first quarter GDP, what happened was, instead of Obamacare contributing $40 billion to real GDP in the first quarter, Obamacare magically ended up subtracting $6.4 billion from GDP, and the whole thing came tumbling down. Obamacare is a complete failure. It did not do what it was supposed to do. It is not giving health benefits to pretty much anyone. But don't worry, Goldman Sachs is out there and they're saying, well, we had some bad weather and yeah, we revised it down a little bit, but now we're looking at all the statistics and all the illusion-based information, and we see that GDP is going to grow to 4% in the second quarter of this year. It really looks good. I think we're going to really have a fantastic recovery. Now, why are they doing this? They're doing this to convince everyone that we are headed to this amazing recovery and everything is going to be fine. But we know this is not the truth. Now, durable goods, they have also tumbled. Durable goods orders tumbled to 1.0%. This is the biggest miss in 2014. And we're also seeing this week that mortgage applications and refinancing applications have fallen again. Now, they've told us that we're in this fantastic real estate surge. People are buying like crazy, and of course they're going back to May where we had a little bump up. But since that time period, the mortgage applications, the refinancing applications have been plummeting every single week after that. It has not been getting better. It has been getting worse. Now, the Baltic Dry Index is down 60% year to date. This is absolutely awful. This is a indicator of how the economy is doing, and right now it shows that the economy is headed for a complete collapse. This is what we are seeing. And the mainstream media is out there, the corporate media, and this is coming out of the Financial Times, the banking intelligence subsidiary, The Banker, and they are even reporting right now that the U.S., this is the title of the article, the U.S. dollar domination is coming to an end. They're starting to realize that, you know what? We are at the end of the dollar cycle. It is starting to collapse, and this is why our fearless leaders, the U.S. government, the central bankers are out there promoting war, creating this event to bring us into war, to cover up this entire meltdown of the economic system. And this is why they created DHS. This is why they created all these laws. This is why they've been trying to take away their rights and to disarm the people. And now we're all it's all coming together, and we see that it is moving very quickly. Now, out in Singapore, officials out there are saying, yes, there are problems out in the economic world, and right now, this is the uneasy calm before the major storm. And right now, the Monetary Authority of Singapore said last night at a dinner that an uneasy calm seems to have settled in markets and that we remain in uncharted waters. He is telling the banks to get ready for something to happen. Make sure they have enough capital because they feel that a big collapse is coming. And we can see this is building up all around in every single industry right now. Everyone has this uneasy feeling that something terrible is about to happen, and there is something terrible. It's called the collapse. Now, we understand that the Obama administration has been bringing up these immigrants down in the Texas area. They're coming from Central America through Mexico, and of course, nobody can understand how they're getting from Central America through Mexico into the United States. It is children. They're trying to pass this immigration bill, and of course the Obama administration is making a crisis. They don't want the corporate media down there. They don't want anyone reporting on it. We have Texas down there, the governor of Texas, they're trying to call in the National Guard. We have militia showing up, making a man wall, and all of a sudden we get this order for about 42,000 pairs of underwear for these immigrants coming over the border. Now, when we look at this whole entire situation, we have to really look at pretty much everything that's going on here. And let's just think about this for a second. The United States government, the central bankers, have been telling us that terrorists are coming into the country. You have to be scanned, they have to pat you down, coming into the airport, sporting events. They have to strip search you, and they need to do all this, and they have to take away your rights because of terrorism. So now we have people just coming over the border without any type of checks or anything. So how is this terrorism thing really serious if they're just letting this happen? Because right now what we're seeing is that the Border Patrol kind of like disappeared from the area, and the borders now are just collapsing, and they're just coming over in droves. So this terrorism thing doesn't seem so serious like they've been making it out to be. And of course we know this was to instill fear in the people. And also what we're seeing is that they're paying money to house these people, to shower these people, to clothe these people. What about the people in Detroit that have lost their homes, that are out on the street? What about all the homeless who've lost their jobs, who can't make ends meet? Where is the help for these people? Non-existent. But here we are giving help to a manufactured crisis, and that's exactly what it is. This has been ginned up to do many different things, to help pass the immigration bill, to probably put them on Obamacare, to bring in low-wage workers, to increase the debt through the United States, and eventually have these people join the armed forces so we have a force to fight. And of course, they will be allowed to vote. So we can see this is being used for many different reasons, and this was completely set up by the Obama administration. We know back in January, they put ads out there looking for escorts to escort these people, and we can see this whole thing is a complete and utter setup. Now, the Supreme Court ruled that cops now need a warrant to search cell phone data. Well, they always really needed this. They cannot search through your personal items without a search warrant. I don't care if it's electronic, paper, it doesn't matter. It's just the form of medium that it is on. It makes no difference. It is your personal information. And we really don't need the Supreme Court to tell us this, that we know that, yes, this is my personal information. You can't read it. Just like you had a folded up pieces of paper, they can't open it and read it. The same thing with the phone. They can't go into your phone and read your personal information. Who cares if it's on an electronic piece of paper inside your phone? It makes no difference. But they've ruled, and it's in our favor, finally, that they need a warrant. Well, they pretty much need a warrant for everything. And also the federal judge says the no-fly list rules are unconstitutional. Really? Putting people on a list saying that they can't fly because they're suspected of being a terrorist, and you're not allowed to look at the list, and you can't understand why you've been put on it? Well, of course it's unconstitutional. They have to give a reason. You have to prove why you're on this list. And right now a federal judge in Oregon said Tuesday that the rule surrounding the use of a no-fly list managed by the United States government violates the constitutional rights of the U.S. citizens, including therein. District Judge Anna Brown's ruling this week will now force the government to fine-tune its procedures for handling requests from flyers who want to know if they're included on that list. They should be putting no one on the list because they need specific proof of why you're on the list. And why do we have secret lists? Very interesting. Now, the ACLU is out there, and they are saying that the police forces around the country are being militarized, and this is not a good sign of things to come because they're treating citizens like the enemy. The increasing use of military-style tactics and weapons by police forces across the United States puts civilians at needless risk of death and injury, according to a strongly worded ACLU report. The study, called War Comes Home, the Excessive Militarization of American Policing, warns that police departments across the country have been offered incentives by the federal government to arm up and now risks alienating communities as a result of heavy-handed raids. We see this completely across the United States. Every single local law enforcement is now coming into compliance with DHS. They're getting electronic surveillance equipment, they're getting machine guns, they're getting military garb, they're getting tanks, they're getting pretty much everything because they realize that they need to bring all the local law enforcement into compliance with DHS because they need their help maintaining control over the situation when the economy comes tumbling down, and they need to control the American people because most of the people will be rioting because it will take them by surprise. They will be really shocked to see what is going to happen, that their money will be worthless, that there'll be no food in the markets. People will be ransacking all different areas. And the government is afraid that these people might rise up and try to remove them from power. And this is why they needed to implement this strategy to control the American people and, of course, take those people from the streets who are a threat to the government and remove them from the situation. And this is why we see all of this happening throughout the last couple of years. Now, they are really pushing Boko Haram right now, and of course they're doing this because no one's really paying attention. And of course, whatever's happening in Nigeria should be the focus of the Nigerian government and police forces there. It should have nothing to do with the United States. I don't know why the United States needs to get involved in all of this. Well, of course I do. Because wherever China is, that's where the United States has to be. They cannot let China get the natural resources of these countries. The central bankers want the natural resources of all these countries, and this is why we're down there. It has nothing to do with terrorism. It has nothing to do with Boko Haram. This is the story they're using to create the illusion of why the United States needs to be down there. But right now, Boko Haram, now they're saying they have abducted about 60 women and young girls in the past week, and all of a sudden, Boko Haram decided to create this explosion through the Nigerian mall that killed 19 people. Boko Haram just decided to do this, and they are really intensifying this because they really want U.S. troops inside Nigeria. The Nigerian government has been saying, no, we don't want you in here, and they're going to continually push this until they say, okay, you can come into the country. Because you have to remember, Nigeria and China, they are buddy-buddy. China is bringing in billions and billions of dollars into Nigeria to build up their infrastructure, help them extract natural resources like gold and oil, lithium, and many other things in Nigeria. And the central bankers want a piece of this. They don't want China having this type of grip on there. And many of the countries in Africa right now are removing the dollar from the reserves, ramping up the yuan renminbi into their reserves. And of course, we understand that Kenya is the clearinghouse for the Chinese yuan and renminbi. Now, Putin right now is saying that Russia is considering banning state companies and other strategically important firms from holding accounts at foreign-owned banks. Russia is considering banning these companies because they're afraid of more sanctions that are coming. Yesterday, I reported on Russia saying, where President Putin was asking the Russian parliament to pretty much repeal the military usage in Ukraine. And right now, the Russian Federation Council has voted to repeal the legislation which allows the use of Russian armed forces on the territory of Ukraine. So they removed that right now, and right now, Putin and Russia are completely saying, listen, we removed this. We never had any intentions whatsoever of invading Ukraine. We left it up to the people. The people are deciding. Now, of course, the United States is out there saying, well, since Russia has done this, we're going to maybe not place sanctions on the Russian country itself, because we were just about to do that. We were about to place sanctions on many of the different sectors and on Russia, and right now, since Russia made this move, we're going to back off a little bit, but continually work with these sanctions and put them into place and get them and have them ready just in case Russia decides to change their mind. And of course, we know for a fact they were never going to place these sanctions on different Russian sectors and on the Russian government itself in the country, because they understand that the U.S. economy, the European nations are completely falling apart. And if they did this, it would have a boomerang effect, and it would bring the European economy and United States economy to its knees. The people would look at this and say, you just placed sanctions on Russia and our economy is collapsing. We blame the central bankers and the U.S. government, and they knew this was going to happen, and this is why they didn't do it at all. But don't worry, NATO is still out there, and NATO is saying that they are not going to cooperate with Russia. NATO has decided to extend its suspension on practical cooperation with Russia because it sees no change in Moscow's behavior right now. And this is coming from NATO Secretary General Rasmussen. Now, Rasmussen is looking to present a plan to Ukraine and have them have them being brought into the fold of NATO. NATO Secretary General Rasmussen presented the alliance plan to bolster Ukraine's defense capabilities. And of course, this was the plan from the start. The United States government, central bankers, the EU wanted Ukraine on the EU system because Yankovic decided he would rather go with Russia than with the EU system, because he looked at all the countries throughout Europe and say, wow, a lot of these are in a huge amount of debt, and most of the people don't have jobs. So I'm going to go with Russia. And all of a sudden, we saw the coup d'etat take effect because they couldn't allow this to happen, and the United States central bankers and the European nations, the EU, decided to step in and kick out the government, the elected government, place in a puppet regime, and all of a sudden, at that point, things started really started falling apart, where Crimea voted to be separate and apart from Ukraine. Southeastern section decided to be separate and apart from Ukraine, and their whole plan completely fell apart. They lost everything they thought they were going to gain, and right now it's all falling apart. Okay, now the tribes in Yemen, they are really pushing to remove the puppet regime in Yemen right now. These anti-government tribes have disrupted Yemen's energy sector. They've taken over, looks like an oil firm, and the oil firm had to suspend operations right now. They cut all crude delivery, and they're saying that because of these anti-government tribes, they cannot produce the oil, and you can see they're really pushing their agenda. Now, of course, the United States government, central bankers are trying to link all of this with ISIL and ISIS. The Yemeni president is out there saying that, no, these tribes, they're not Yemen people, they're foreigners. They're not real people of these country. And of course, the people of the country say, no, we are the tribes of Yemen, and we want you out of office, we want the central bankers out of here, and we want the United States government out there. And this is why they call everyone Al-Qaeda in each one of these countries, because Congress allows the president to use drones on Al-Qaeda terrorists. If they call them the people of the government, they couldn't do this, and this is why they've been using drones all this time. They've been pounding and killing innocent people who just want their country back. Now, Kerry is going to discuss the Iraq crisis with NATO right now. He is off flying to Brussels to talk to NATO about how they can invade Iraq and then get into Syria. And he is talking to them, and we'll see what their plan will be once they come out and execute it. Now, it looks like John Kerry was in Iraq, as we know, and it looks like he was talking to Maliki to include other parts of Iraq, like the Sunnis and the Kurds, and bring them together. And right now, Maliki rejects call for a salvation government. Iraq's Prime Minister Maliki has rejected international appeals for a new, inclusive new government. He said an emergency salvation government would represent a coup against Iraq's constitution. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has said Iraq should be pressured to usher in a new inclusive government. Barack Obama has discussed the crisis in Iraq in a phone call with Britain's Prime Minister David Cameron, and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has insisted that the deployment of American military forces is not intervention in Iraq's affairs. Well, of course it is. They're bringing them in there. They're looking to get, they're bringing in 300 military advisors, which we know they are not, and parts of them are on a special covert mission. What that mission is, we will have to see. Now, it looks like the Sunni militants have really gained a lot here. It looks like they're controlling most of the central swath of Iraq, and they are gaining on many of the cities right now. And this is a mixture of ISIL and ISIS and the Sunni people who have taking the opportunity to use this as a civil war, and it is growing. The tribes are joining in, and this movement is growing. But again, the United States government is using ISIS and ISIL to show everyone that there's terrorism there, that they're going to hit the United States, and we should all be afraid. Now, the Sunni militants in Iraq, they've taken control of several small oil fields now. They already have the Baji oil refinery. The militants led by the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria Levant, this is what coming out of the news. That's what they call it. Now they're saying they're being led by ISIS and ISIL. No, this is a separate civil war going on by the people here in Iraq. These are the Sunnis, and then we have the United States, Israel, Arab nation-controlled ISIS group, and they're intertwined. And right now what we're seeing is that they've taken over the Ageil oil fields, which produce about 28,000 barrels a day, and they are, controlling the refinery, they're controlling the oil fields, and they are really they're right now headed towards Baghdad, and what most of the people are saying now is Baghdad might fall because the amount of troops that are headed there is growing but exponentially as they approach Baghdad. Now, of course, what we're seeing right now is that the United States government, the central bankers, they like to make this link between ISIS, ISIL, and Syria, and it seems like they're doing it. Because if we have to remember, the president said it doesn't matter the geographical location of the group. The terrorist group is the terrorist group, and we will go anywhere we have to get them. And what I'm seeing is something a little differently than what other people are reporting. We hear that Syrian warplanes, and this is coming out of the United States press, and they are saying that Syrian warplanes strike in Iraq, killing 57 civilians. Reports that Syrian warplanes carried out a cross-border attack on Iraqi towns this week is further evidence of the blurring between the two countries' borders as they face an offensive by Islamic extremists. At least 57 Iraqi civilians were killed and more than 120 others were wounded by what local officials say were Syrian warplanes that struck several border areas of the Anbar province Tuesday. The reports of the Syrian incursion into Iraq is a reminder that the civil war in Syria and the unrest in Iraq are not isolated, but linked in ways that threaten the security of both. Unfortunately, the Syrian regime carried out barbarian attacks against civilians in Anbar province. And they are out there telling everyone that yes, it was Syria, they just flew in, they killed civilians, and this is uncalled for. Of course, Syria's out there saying, we did not fly into Iraq whatsoever. We didn't do it, and this is coming out of the United States press. Now, what I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to link and show that Syria is killing people in Iraq right now, and the United States government is going after ISIL and ISIS, which is between Syria and Iraq, and we can see that it's blurring the line, and we might have to go into Syria to stop this, and they're making it seem like Syria now might be invading Iraq, and all this is being used to create the illusion that they have to go into Syria, and they're going to continually do this. And there are many different ways they can do this. One way to do this, of course, is to say that ISIS attacked Turkey, and NATO needs to come in. NATO treaty requires members to come to defense of partners. The Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS, has captured a number of small towns along the Iraq-Turkey border and is threatening to take territories inside Turkey itself, which could force fellow NATO members to come to the nation's defense. Now, you have to remember, John Kerry is now meeting with NATO. If we look at this, Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty states, the parties agree that an armed attack against one or more of them in Europe or North America shall be considered an attack against them all, and consequently they agree that if such an armed attack occurs, each of them, in exercise of the right of individual or collective self-defense recognized by Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations, will assist the party or parties so attacked by taking forthwith, individually and in concert with other parties, such actions as it deems necessary, including the use of armed forces to restore and maintain the security of the North Atlantic area. So we can see right now they might show that ISIS and ISIL have attacked Turkey. Of course, this would be a false flag event to bring the NATO forces into the picture. And of course, we have to remember Turkey was trying to use a false flag, and they took their military personnel, snuck them into Syria, and fired missiles from Syria into Turkey, and the Turkey government was going to say Syria was attacking so they can bring NATO in. So we can see they're still up to their same old tricks, and they are trying to get NATO involved. And we might see that happen. They're trying to blur the lines between Syria, ISIL, ISIS, and Iraq right now, and all of this is being created for what? The main event. And of course, the main event will bring this whole thing home, where the people of the United States, the UK, the European nations will say, enough's enough, let's go and bomb them. Let's take the war to Iraq and Syria and get this done. Right now, Dick Cheney is out there, and I mentioned this in the beginning of the report. He is saying that the next terrorist attack will be far deadlier than 9/11. I think there will be another attack, and next time I think it's likely to be far deadlier. Now, of course, he is pushing this out there, and they're continually using this propaganda to convince everyone that it will be ISIS and ISIL who is doing this. Now, they're using a lot of social media, Twitter, to convince everyone, and they're keeping this on the corporate media to make us believe that something's going to happen. This also goes on to say that the Islamic State of Iraq and Levant plans to use the territory it has recently secured as a launching pad for attacking the U.S. homeland, according to a new congressional report that cites comments by the leader of the al-Qaeda-linked militant group. Several leading representatives of the U.S. intelligence community have stated that ISIL maintains training camps in Iraq and Syria, has the intent to attack the United States, and is reportedly recruiting and training individuals to do so. Well, really? It quotes al-Baghdadi threatening the U.S., "Know, O defender of the cross, that a proxy war will not help you in the Levant, just as it will not help you in Iraq. Soon you will be in direct conflict, God permitting, against your will." And that was a quote from al-Baghdadi. And they are really pushing this agenda hard. They haven't let up. They are continually doing this because they have already planned this event. And they're also saying that online backers of the Sunni Islamist militants who seized swaths of Iraq this month have said that any U.S. airstrikes on the fighters will lead to attacks on Americans. American intervention in the affairs of the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant means that the American infidel is a target for the strikes of the holy warriors anywhere. And we can see that this is being pushed. Now, they already have these people put into place in the United States. We already know this. They've been letting us know this for a very long time. We know they're broken off into lone wolf groups. We know they are bomb makers. They have been set and ready to go. They are sleeping right now. And when they are activated, this is when it's going to come alive. They have already planned this for a very, very long time. The central bankers of the United States government realized the economy was falling apart. They realized they couldn't get into Syria, and they needed to have something occur to move the people. Because what are the polls showing? The polls are showing that the people of the United States do not want war. Congress has a 7% approval rating, so they're not going to vote for war. The only way to move the people is to do what? Is to have an event occur where it moves the people. Now, of course, McCain is out there saying this is going to be far deadlier, and I've been saying this for quite a while. Yeah, it's going to be, because they are going to have to go all out to really wake the people up and have them move this forward. They're going to have to do something, not just in one area of the country. They're going to have to do this in many different locations. And we have to remember, they've told us that these groups might have a nuclear weapon. They might have sarin gas, and they might use it here in the United States. And we also have to remember, we have Syria, the Syrian Electronic Army, and we have these groups who are well funded, as they say. They're like a corporate entity, and they're telling us all their plans on the social media. So we're going to see, most likely as this economy completely falls apart, the financial institution hit. with some type of cyber attack. So this way they can say, yes, they hit the financial institutions, it brought the stock market down, but thank God we had the kill switches. We were able to cut it off before we really imploded. But this would have nothing to do with the other country that was hitting us. This is really a false flag event to make us believe that they brought the economy down, but we already know the economy is failing. All of a sudden then they will say we'll need to do bail-ins in the banks. You will not be able to get your money out. So any money that's stuck in the bank, that's it. It is stuck. You will not be able to access it at this point. We will see this happen in the UK and the European nations, Australia, Switzerland, Canada, all have bail-in documents. Then we're going to see certain different chemical attacks throughout the United States, and most could be a nuclear type of weapon which would explode, could be a dirty nuke of some type, but it's going to happen in many different cities because they need to get the attention of people to realize that something is happening. We will see the power go out in many different cities because of cyber attacks and physical attacks. All of this is going to happen at once because they need to make this look incredible to show the American people why we need to go and bring our military and why you need to send your children to this next war. And they will push this as hard as they can. The president will come out there, the Fed will come out there saying that this other country or group has done this. This is unbelievable. We were in a recovery, as they kept telling us all throughout this time period. They destroyed America, and now it's time for Americans to rise up and go to war. And this is what's going to happen. He's going to say the Fed has graciously said they will continue with quantitative easing. They will pump more money into the system because what will be happening at that time is countries around the world will start dropping treasury bonds, removing the dollar from reserves. So who has to pick up the slack but the Federal Reserve? Of course, we won't hear any of this because the corporate media will be blacked out about all of this. They will increase quantitative easing, and as the economy falls apart here in the United States, the Federal Reserve will have to buy up the real estate and everything else, just like they've done in the past, to keep the system alive. And at this time, what will happen is the dollar amount will be devalued every day, and you will see prices skyrocket. They will lose control of the gold and silver market. That will start to skyrocket, and people will try to get into that market, and it will be too late for them. You will see then people saying, oh my God, I can't afford milk, I can't afford food, I can't afford fuel, and then people will start raiding the markets, and people then will become desperate. And this is when you'll see DHS activated. You'll see the local law enforcement all come in compliance with DHS, and this then will turn out to be a complete mess because most of the people are going to be shocked. They do not understand what is coming. Listen, everyone, be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.